Hey guys, it's Car from Enchanted Vines, and today we're going to be making a wreath in under 20 minutes. This wreath will also have a corresponding wreath kit for sale that has everything in it with the exception of the tools, so like the glue gun and the wire cutters, but for everything else, it will be included. So to start off, we are going to clean our wreath and just kind of assess. We're doing a crescent style wreath, which means that one half is going to be covered and pretty much one half is going to be exposed. So just like we all know, we all have a best side in our photos and things like that. And so we want to do the same thing with our wreath. So looking at this wreath, it does still need to be cleaned, but this is nice and round. And over here, it's a little bit flat and wonky. So I'm going to identify that this is the side that we're going to cover up. Okay, so fancy camera time. We're going to go over to our easel. And we're just going to polish this off. So anything that's really sticking out. Some people like to leave like the crawly pieces on. And if you do, that's totally fine. It's up to you. It's your wreath. You want it to be as personal and as much to your liking as possible. So we're going to go through and just clean some of this up. This wreath doesn't have a lot of leaves in it. However, if it did, you want to clean those out, especially on the side that you're going to be gluing, because the leaves are already decomposing. So like this one has some pine needles in it. So if you have materials in here that are decomposing already, even though you're not going to see them, they're not going to be an effective part of the wreath to glue into because they're already falling out. So I'm just going to try and clean some of this out. And then even though you don't see the back, you don't want anything that's really protruding because things like this are going to ruin somebody's door, your door. So we want to just take a minute and make sure there's nothing like egregiously sticking out. Okay. All right, so putting this back to the front, we are going to make a hook to hang our wreath, and for that I use this, it's called like a grapevine wire, and it's because it looks just like the grapevine. So what we're going to do is, okay, so this is going to be my top part. I'm going to find a thick piece of this wreath and I'm going to feed the wire through like so. If you do it on just something thin, it's not going to hold, it's probably going to break. Or if you go like way in and you kind of take a huge clump of it, you're not going to end up with a very big hook. So you want to just take one single solid piece, feed it through, and just twist the ends. Okay, and then slide that part in like so. And because it does like blend in so well with the wreath, I always just add a little ribbon to mark it. It'll just make it that much easier when they go to hang their wreath, or if you go to hang your wreath. Okay. Here we go. Now to start, we're going to use our ficus leaves. And all of the wreath kits, these always come with a few extras. When I do workshops and I'm zhuzhing something up, usually I'm going to use foliage to do so because it's light, it's airy, and usually it kind of fills some of those gaps. So what we're going to do with our ficus leaves is we're going to spread them out. And for these side ones, they're the perfect length. So we're just going to trim those at the base. And then for this middle one, it's really tall. So I'm going to go to about the halfway point, trim it, and then we're going to just cut this piece off. All right, so we're going to repeat that. There's going to be 5 stems of this in the kit. However, I think usually you're only going to need about 3. So I'm just going to prep for 3. All right, so the side pieces, we're cutting at the base. And then this middle one, we're going to cut in 2 spots. Last one. So what is pretty funny about this wreath that we're working on is that I just got a call ordering a wreath that someone had seen on my site, and when we finally figured out like what wreath it was, it's actually somebody's wreath from one of my workshops. So even though that person was doing a wreath workshop with me and following my instructions, she had her own little spin on it and the way she placed her colors. So I'm actually going to recreate something that someone else did in a workshop. So I think that's kind of funny. I have to find that person and let them know that basically their wreath is selling. So anyways, so because of that, I'm going to be following some specific things to make sure that we're fulfilling our customers' needs. But to start, we're always going to use, not always, most often I like to use our foliage to set the parameters. So if you look over here, fancy camera work, I have this glue pot. And so I'm kind of like just dipping as I go, okay? Glue pots are perfect because they're a nice hands-free way of designing. They burn like a mother if you do get glue on you. So some people keep a little dish of water near them. I like to just swear with regrets when it happens. But all right, so very OCD. So when I do something on top, I'm going to repeat it on the bottom. And what that does is that creates a balanced look as I go. So, and when we're going on the bottom half of the wreath, you'll notice I'm sliding things upward. It kind of gives it an extra opportunity to catch. Even though we're gluing, everything that we can do to make this wreath as secure as possible with the materials we want to do. I'm in New Hampshire, and for anybody who is a New Englander, you know that the weather here is really erratic and it can be really tough. So you want to make something designed for, you know, where the wreath is going to be. All right, so now we've got 2 up top, 2 in the middle. And notice that they're all going off in their separate directions. That's creating this airy look. And it's also not really like a stressed, you know, compact way of designing. When we want to design something that looks natural, we want to think about how things grow in nature. And so as corny as it is, I always say it should be so that a butterfly could fly through, you know, the materials. All right, so here is our next piece of greenery. And we're going to bend this a little bit so that it's following the curve of our grapevine. Okay, everything here is very malleable. Like, you're not going to break something. So don't be afraid to manipulate the materials so that it suits the design that you want. All right, so now we have a nice little halo that's going to guide us with our florals. It doesn't mean we won't go past these guidelines at all, but it's a good way of starting to like form what your recipe is. So for this one, we're using these big bloom hydrangeas. These have foliage on it that are going to interfere. So for some designs, I keep the foliage. For this one, I don't. I'm going to take it off. First up, we're going to take this big bloom, and it's going to be pointed inward a little bit, okay? So I put about 1 inch of the stem through the wreath, but then if you look, there's a lot of space in between where the wreath base meets the florals. So there's like a good 3 inches. That also creates that airiness. If you're designing for somebody with a screen door, this is going to be too much. It's going to look smushed. You would have to have the bloom go all the way in and lay flat, okay? Or use smaller blooms. Now we're going to put our second one in, and we're staying kind of towards like the middle of our wreath. But this one, the head is going to point outward, okay? And that's all intentional. If you look at flowers, they grow in different directions to kind of catch the sun. And so we're going to recreate that look here. Now we're going to be going in with our cabbage roses. These are bisque, so they kind of have a little bit of light and a little bit of more saturated pinks in different areas. And for these, you can push up the greenery. I like the greenery on these, so I'm going to keep them. So we're going to work in the middle. So this is why we want to leave a little bit of space between these blooms, because we're going to work within it. And we're going to do a clustering. So some of these blooms are small, they're petite, and then some are just this full size. So we're going to mix them up a little bit and do this grouping. Okay. Next, we're going to go in with these gorgeous peonies. I love the vibrancy of these flowers. These pop. These are going to catch anybody's attention. My husband, who likes to drink wine and shop, did not tell me that he ordered electric bikes. So I'm trying to give them a chance without dying on them. But we were driving through local neighborhoods, and I was like, I could not stop looking at people's doors and people's wreaths. So, you know, people do, maybe they're not as crazy about it as I am, but I do think it's something that helps your house stand out. It kind of has a bit of a pop of your personality with a pretty wreath on the door. All right, now we're going to go back up here with the cabbage rose. And then we're going to repeat. Okay, so you can see how easily this is already coming together. I feel like I want to add something else. Let's see. We're going to use some of these pink ranunculus. And this is kind of like a beautiful palette. Like, they're not off-putting to one another. They're complementary. So let's just start with one at a time. I'm going to fill this little gap right here with one. Look at how detailed these are. Gorgeous. And we're going to go down here and repeat the same. Now on these as well, there's a variation of sizes. So to keep that interest and texture, we're going to go for 2 of the smaller blooms. I'm going to put, I like to always have something that kind of trails off at the end. So we're going to use one of these small ranunculus. And we're just going to do a little pop of yellow. Now these have really tacky foliage on them. So anything that looks artificial, like the blooms themselves are so pretty, but this foliage could not look worse to me. So we're going to pull that off and we're going to toss that. If we want to make something natural looking, we have to manipulate the materials to make sure that we're doing it, that we're seeing it through. So we're going to put a little pop of yellow up top. Actually, I'm going to put the fuller piece up here. I always feel like everything up towards the top is just going to be more noticeable. So let's use the one with more blooms around here and repeat. Then we're going to go in with some of this. This is a filler bush. So this also, not a huge fan of the foliage, the color and the sheen on it. I just don't love. So we're going to push those down for what we're doing. These are always the best type of bushes, is when the materials kind of move around. All right, so let's see. We're going to use half of this bush. Okay, now we're going to start distributing this evenly throughout. So we're going to put one up top. And this is a good time to make sure, again, that you're doing things, you're repeating steps, so that one, you don't run out of materials. You don't find out that you kind of use too much up top and then you need to remove it. And also just making sure that you're keeping that balanced look. Now we still have our extra ficus leaves, so we're going to be plugging in some of the bare areas with that. And like I said before, I always like something kind of delicate to trail off. There we go. Then we're going to use some ferns. We're going to use half of this fern bush. This is one of my favorite fern bushes from Pioneer. So there's a lot on here. These cost, I don't know, maybe $5, $6, but you get a lot out of them. There's, you know, a variation of colors. These can be manipulated. And I think there's probably like 9 of them too. Yeah. So these are a good value. These are good to always have on hand, whether you're doing floral arrangements or wreaths or whatever. So we're going to use half of this bush. And we want to get these placed in the most impactful way and make it a little bit unexpected. That's what I like about creating textured looks. It's like sometimes there's a point where you could stop or you could take it to that next level by using whether it's berries or different greenery, just things to keep it interesting and kind of keep your eye jumping around to see, like taking in everything that's on your design. All right, so we're looking at this and there's definitely a balding area right here that we want to address. Let's see. So I think we'll go back in with another ranunculus. See. Now we'll go in with some of our remaining ficus that we had trimmed. And so the parts that were kind of cut in the bottom middle, I call these nubbins. They don't have that pretty point to them, so I don't use them around the perimeter. However, they're really great fillers. So we want to disrupt in between, like if we think about how a garden grows, there are plants growing within one another, there are weeds growing, there's things climbing, all that stuff. So we want to take a minute to try and recreate some of that magic that we see out in nature. Let's hear it for the nubbins. And now if I took a step back from this, it's always so helpful to just take a step back to see if there's an issue with balance. I would say that the greenery down here is lacking here. So that's how we identify that there is a need area. Okay, so we're going to go back in, and something as simple as just getting one more of these pointy ficus leaves can make like such a difference. I'm stepping back, we get a little hole here. So I give you a guide for how to place these. However, things can definitely change. Sometimes your initial hook you want to move because your design went in a different direction. I mean, every grapevine is different, so how you place in it is going to always be different. All right, so here you go. So we did that in 19 minutes, but we're not done. So we're going to flip this over, and you can see all these stems are sticking out. These all need to be trimmed. And when you trim them, if you look, the majority of the glue that I had dipped it in is also with it. So we're going to have to go back in with a glue gun and apply a little bit from the outside. Again, these are just some of those finishing touches with polishing that will help create a beautiful product, and one that lasts, and one that is enjoyed without damaging a door, a mirror, whatever it is, wherever it's hung. All right, so once I've done that, I'm going to go in with my Sure Bonder glue gun, and I'm just going to start to add these to the edges. Now I use Sure Bond or glue gun. I use Gorilla glue sticks. The wreath base is 18 inches. That's my go-to. I would switch it up to make something bigger or smaller for a custom order. If somebody had like a really oversized door, or if they maybe had like a more antique style door that's narrow. And so we're going in with our moss and we're just covering it up. No one wants to see how the sausage is made. So let's just try and keep this whole thing as natural as possible without seeing the mechanics that we use. So everything, even down to this moss, is included in the wreath kit. And it's just a good way to kind of experiment, to see if you like it. I mean, not everybody, uses moss. Some people just take the discarded leaves. I like the moss. I think it looks the nicest. That's just me. So we're going to let this dry just a little bit. All right. So we're at like 21 and a half minutes, okay? I'm having a bad hair day. I hope you're really focused on the wreath. All right, so here's our design for today. We made a beautiful spring wreath in about 20 minutes. There is a kit that's going to be listed on our direct site, which is enchantedvines.com. Live recording things. It's just great. Just trying to distract you from my hair. So, all right, guys, this is today's wreath tutorial. I hope you found it helpful, and thank you for tuning in.